Dr. Thirakiacharan Setasin. Formerly, I was Senator of the Upper House of the Thai Parliament, Minister of Education for Thailand. SEAMEO STEM education was conceived in March 2018, and I could see that the future of education lies in the development of science and technology in keeping with the changes of the world. STEM, standing for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But in the real world, they have to be used. They have to be applied to problems of the world. SEAMEO stands for Southeast Asia Ministers of Education Organizations. So the idea is to work politically, internationally, and collaboratively with other organizations. It is a medium, a platform for things to take place. So if you want to do research, you do research in education, it's like a leadership institute to provide leadership for STEM.
The Center will inform regional policymakers on how to improve STEM education and provide models of professional development and curriculum that can be implemented across the region.
Now, if you look at the world now, the world is changing very rapidly, as you know. And interestingly, if you look at the vacancies of jobs nowadays, the jobs that are usually unfilled nowadays, jobs related to STEM.
Enhancing the quality of the STEM workforce is another key strategic goal of the Center. The Center has identified a new program for the region, Career Academies, which has demonstrated significant impact internationally on student motivation and employability.
SEAMEO STEM-ED, trying to work with and help teachers, educators, students in the region to advance in STEM education. The reason that I wanted to be regional, that we are stronger together if we work with our neighboring countries. SEAMEO is for ASEAN. By helping other countries and working with more advanced countries, not only in the region, our region as a whole can grow together.
By working in collaboration and creating partnerships, we can strengthen regional school leadership capacity, enhance instructional practices, and cultivate cultures of shared responsibility for student performance in critical thinking and problem-solving skills. And as a consequence, improvements in performance on PISA can be realized. Therefore, SEAMEO member countries have expressed a common desire to utilize a problem-based learning approach through collaboration on developing STEM learning materials which match regional contexts.
If we care about STEM education in the region, SEAMEO STEM is a way forward. And then everybody will be a good human being.
So without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome the director of SEAMEO STEM-ED Center to officially open this event and give welcome remarks. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Phonpan Waitayangkoon ka.
Professor Thomas Cochrane, Senior Advisor, SEAMEO STEM Education Center. Professor Kate Montgomery, International Education Consultant and Curriculum Designer, Reading and Writing Project, Teachers College, Columbia University, USA. Ms. Dee Bourbon, Senior Social Investment Advisor, Chevron Corporation, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Phonpan Waitayangkoon, the director of the SEAMEO STEM Education Center, and I want to welcome you to our roundtable on literacy practices that work. This is one of a series of workshops we are offering to share knowledge about what works with policymakers and educators in the region. We believe that policies that are based on evidence of effectiveness are likely to serve our children and our nations better. So we want all of you to pay attention to the evidence of what works and that begins with sharing the evidence with you. Literacy is a critical issue in our region. 6 of the 11 nations belonging to SEAMEO took part in the first phase of the Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics, or CPLM project, which assessed reading and writing at grade 5 in 2019. And so we know a lot about their performance in reading and writing. Only 2 countries, Vietnam and Malaysia, had majorities of their students performing at the level expected by the end of grade 5. In the other 4 nations, a quarter or more of the students score below level 2 in reading and would be considered illiterate. That means they cannot read or comprehend a newspaper story, or fill out a job application, or read a machine manual in their workplace. Their future opportunities are limited to manual labor. 6 of our member nations participate in the International PISA assessment, which includes a reading test. Students in 2 of them, Singapore and Vietnam, perform quite well. In other 4, not so well. The average reading scores in their first languages are well below the OECD average score. Students in 3 of them, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines, rank among the lowest performing countries in reading on the PISA test. So we have current data on student reading performance for 9 of our 11 countries. This is important because reading and writing are still critical skills. You can't read the messages on your iPhone unless you can read them. You can use material from a Google search unless you can read it. And you certainly cannot study science unless you can read. Reading is a 21st century skill, and writing. All higher level jobs require writing skills. So we are gathered today to ask, what do we know about helping our children become literate? And how can we put that knowledge into action? Our senior advisor, Professor Tom Cochran, keeps telling me that we know a lot about how to teach reading, but we are not using that knowledge. Perhaps that is true, but a lot of what is known is knowledge about European languages. And that knowledge may not transfer well. The activities that are effective with leaders of English may not work as well for leaders of Thai or Tagalog. So I invite you to listen to our experts and ask questions on the chat function. We will respond to all of your questions. If we don't have time today, we will get back to you tomorrow. Let's get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ponpan. With all respect, I'd like to invite the Senior Social Investment Advisor, Chevron Corporation USA, to talk about partnership of Chevron-SEAMEO for strengthening regional STEM education. Everyone, please welcome Ms. Dee Bourbon.
Thank you very much. I'm assuming that you can all hear me okay. Dr. Ponpan, Professor Montgomery, Professor Cochran, Dr. Kessera, distinguished participants, and my colleagues from Chevron and SEAMEO STEM-ED. Good morning from Australia, and thank you for attending this event and sharing literacy practices that work. This session is part of an ongoing series that Chevron Corporation has funded as part of our commitment to improving education outcomes in Thailand and the Asia Pacific region more generally. As a global corporation, We recognise how fundamental literacy and numeracy skills are in developing critical thinking and problem solving. And these are exactly the types of skills and mindsets that we at Chevron want for our current and our future workforce. We also recognise that more than half of children in low and middle income countries struggle to read or understand simple text by the age of 10. And as Dr. Pornpans just said, this is particularly true also in Southeast Asia. And in a world that's rapidly evolving with a digital economy and all of the challenges and opportunities of globalisation, we think it's never been more important than now to focus on improving literacy. Now, as a child myself, I had a real passion for reading and learning, and my favourite place was the library. I just remember the excitement when new books finally arrived and I could greedily read them during the lunch break. I think every child deserves that same opportunity to experience the joy that reading provides, and that all teachers deserve to have the tools and the skills and the learning materials so they can deliver effective instruction and therefore foster their students' love for reading and writing. One of the things I particularly like about this program, with the book program, is that it teaches children the great and ancient art of storytelling as well. And I think in a world of 10-second TikToks, this is a craft that needs protecting and nurturing. One of the reasons Chevron's funding education programs with our excellent partner, SEAMEO STEM-ED, is to help bring some of these best practices from around the world to Thailand and Southeast Asia. And I thought this program, which is a true collaboration between world-leading literacy experts and Thai-leading literacy experts, was a good initiative, because it wasn't just about taking a concept from one country and imposing it on another, assuming it would translate across cultures. It was about co-creating this intervention for the local Thai context and then evaluating whether it works. And then if it does work, how can we help policymakers adopt these practices and improve literacy across the country or even across the region? And to Dr. Pornpan's point, we can't assume that what works in Europe or America will work here in Asia. So I wanted to thank everybody for investing your time here today. And I hope you all walk away from this session absolutely inspired by the new knowledge about literacy practices, and how you'll be able to apply them in your classrooms, with the parents of your students, with your peers, and with your policymakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Berman, for the best practice sharing. Literacy Practices that Work from Professor Kate Montgomery, International Education Consultant and Curriculum Designer, Reading and Writing Project, Teachers College, Columbia University. Everyone please welcome Professor Montgomery.
Welcome everyone here in Bangkok and online. I'm honored to be here today to speak with you about literacy practices that work. So thank you to Chevron and Joy Science, and thank you to SEAMEO STEM-ED for allowing me to come here today. It's quite an opportunity. I appreciate that you all have taken time out of your very hard work and busy schedules to listen to this today. So today, as you know, I'm going to talk about literacy best practices, practices that work. So you can think about literacy in two parts in a way. One part is decoding, making sense of the language, the syntax, the letters, the sounds, and the words on the page. But there's another part that gets less attention, and that's the part that I'm going to talk about today. And that's the thinking, the meaning making, the ability to make coherence and sense out of that print on the page and the ideas that you have in your mind. So for many people, literacy means just the first part, like looking at the letters and making the sounds. And so what that leads to in many places is students, people calling out the sounds, turning the pages of a book and just saying the words. And then when they're finished, they're finished. The words come into their mouth and out of their mouth, and nothing in their heart or mind has changed. So, of course, decoding and encoding, reading and writing with just the text and the language is crucial for learning to read, of course. It's essential. And we will talk about that too. There will be other experts that bring that to the table. But today we're going to talk about the thinking part, and that will be across languages and hopefully across cultures. And I hope it will apply to all of you. So to do that, I want to ask you, if you will, for the first part of this presentation, if you will be willing to pretend to be students, and I will be the teacher, and I'll lead you through a short experience. So a short reading experience. So because we all have different native languages, and because we only have 45 minutes, it's going to be a very short text, mostly visual text, almost like a picture book. A picture book like the ones we're working on in the project here in Thailand, where there is just a few words, but a lot of pictures. And the meaning is a combination of the words and pictures. So because there are not going to be many words, we'll be able to focus more on the thinking and what that means for the lesson. So will you join me in becoming a student for the first little while, and then we'll go back at the end of the talk and examine the experience we shared, the literacy experience we shared. And I will pull out and name for you 6 practices that I hope we've illustrated during that literacy experience that you can use in your classrooms immediately. Okay? Thumbs up if you're with me on Zoom, in the room. Okay, thank you. Okay. Students. Hold on one second. Students, today I want to talk to you about reading. Each of you in your mind right now, think about what is reading. Just think to yourself, what is reading? And put your thumbs up when you've got an idea in your mind about what is reading. On Zoom too. What is reading? Thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, I bet a lot of you are thinking reading is just saying the words that you see on the page, right? And that is very true. But reading is more. Reading is more than that. It's a lot about thinking and making big ideas, complicated ideas, even when there's only a few words. So the work of reading happens in your brain, not just in your eyes. I'm going to show you what I mean, students, by demonstrating, and then I'm going to ask you to try to do the same work yourself. Okay, so first I'm going to demonstrate, and then students, I'm going to ask you to try it. Okay, here's a text, a short text. The first thing I'm going to do is just observe and read it with the words. Oh my goodness. This is not an apple. That is so weird. It looks like an apple to me. I'm going to keep observing and thinking. I see, it looks like an apple. There's an apple fruit and leaves. I see a gold frame around it. And I see that the words are inside the frame. That's not usually how it is with works of art. The frame is usually only the picture. I wonder what that means. Okay, students, I just observed on my small text. Now I'm going to ask you to observe and see what you notice on your small text. Slide 2, please. So just in your mind, or to your partner if you're in the room in Bangkok, observe. What do you notice? Read the words and see what you can notice. Okay, what do you notice? Will someone share what they've seen? Yeah, somebody said they see a horse with a horn, a unicorn. Yeah, unicorns. You need to believe in yourself. The man is saying you need to believe in yourself. Yes. What else do you notice? If you really observe, what do you see in this picture? Yes, there's some little dots around the unicorn, right? Some strange marks in the air. Yeah, I see those too. What else do you notice? The man seems very serious. Yes, he has a suit on. He looks professional. Yes, and you've read the words, what you need to believe in yourself. Okay, so that's step one in the process. You read it, right? But you haven't made meaning yet, have you? So let's go back to text one, apple. Can we go back to the text number one slide? Thank you. So now I'm going to do another thing. I observed it. Now I'm going to ask why. That's my second step in the process. Observe, and now I'm going to ask why. Why on earth would somebody create this text that has a picture of an apple, but it says this is not an apple? I wonder why that might be. I mean, I guess it's not really an apple, is it? Now that I think about it, it's a picture of an apple. And I guess now that I think about it, it's not even a picture of an apple. It's like light going into my brain. In my neurochemicals are making me think the word apple. It's not really an apple, is it? It's an apple and a stem and leaves. It's, that's so interesting. And why the gold frame? I wonder why the gold frame that I noticed is there. Maybe the artist is trying to show me that there's something important, that I shouldn't just say, oh, it's some ridiculous picture, that I should stop and pay attention. It's framed in gold after all. That could be. And why the words inside the frame? I suppose it could be that the words are just as important as the apple. So now, students, will you go to your text 2? And will you do the same thing I just did? You made some observations. Text 2, please. You made some observations earlier. Now ask yourself why it might be like that. Beyond just reading the words, why? Why did you notice those things? Think to yourself or tell your partner. Yeah, I'm hearing some interesting ideas. What do you think? Will someone share? Do you have an idea about why something might be the way it is? We have to believe in ourselves, even if other people don't believe in us. Wow, imagine that. You're thinking that the artist is saying that even if you feel unreal, even if you feel like a unicorn, you have to believe in yourself. That could be. So that's why the artist chose to put a unicorn there, maybe. Why do you think you notice those little strange dots around the unicorn? Why do you think those are there? Anybody have a thought? Yeah, maybe to show that that creature is magic. Maybe sometimes that the artists do that, right? Or maybe to show it isn't really real, that it has that something in the air is different. Could be that. And the man looks so serious in a suit. You said that before. Why do you think that could be? What's going on? Maybe he's a professional. Maybe he's a doctor or a psychiatrist or something. He's saying he has a lot of authority, right? He's saying you must believe in yourself. Did you see how you were asked? You didn't just make observations and move on. You didn't just read the words and moved on. You asked why, right? Okay, let's go back to the apple one more time. Slide 1. And let's take our thinking up one more level. We started with observations, then we started to put it together and ask why. And now let's push our thinking up a higher level of Bloom's taxonomy and even think like, what is the message of this text? What could it be? So we know that the artist put something here and made me feel sort of surprised at how the words and the picture don't seem to match. And it made me really think harder. Wow, maybe the artist is trying to teach me that I shouldn't just read something and accept my first idea, because my first idea was that this was ridiculous. It made no sense. But then when I really asked why and pushed, I realized it does actually make sense. So I shouldn't maybe take my first meaning. Or maybe the artist is trying to tell me to not always believe my eyes, like that I think it's an apple, but it's not really an apple. I should think more deeply and notice more. That could be the message too. All right, let's look at text 2 one more time and see if you can take your thinking up a level and think, what does this text mean? Will you again think to yourself or talk to the person next to you and think, what might this text teach us even? What's its message? If you're here virtually and you have some ideas, please type them in whatever language you're comfortable. Does anyone have some ideas to share? What might this text mean? Anyone? Yeah, I hear somebody saying it's a bit crazy. Maybe it's making fun of people who in authority who say something, but it doesn't make any sense. Meaning this man is saying you have to believe in yourself, but actually it's not a believable creature. It's not a real creature, but he's saying you have to believe in yourself. So maybe it's making fun of him a bit and teaching me that I should maybe be a bit skeptical of people in suits with authority. Yeah, there are many, many things to take away, right? Maybe I should believe in myself, even if I'm not real, if no one else believes in me, the way one of our participants thought earlier. There's so many messages. Yeah, I see you buzzing. It could mean a lot of things, right? So that, students, that is a quick introduction to a process of thinking about short texts or even pictures that you first observe. You then try to connect your observations together into one thing and ask why those things you observe might be happening. And then you try to make a theory or figure out what the message might be, what it teaches. And those 3 steps, students, you can use on any text, whether it has a lot of words or whether it has no words. You can use it across disciplines even. You can use it in science, math, and history. That's a thinking process that you just experienced. So students, with your books now that you have with your texts, go ahead and read. I mean, I'm talking to you as students now. Go ahead and read and use these steps to help yourself think with bigger ideas and to make sense of the text. And I'll go around and coach you. Okay, students, that's the end of you being students. That was me trying to give you a very quick, fast experience in some of the things I'm going to now list for you about effective literacy instruction. So are you all with me? You ready to move to the next part of the presentation? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to describe to you now 6 shifts that provide the foundation for powerful literacy instruction. And even if students are able to decode or if they are not, these are important. These are crucial. So I'll try to give you examples from that experience we just had. The first shift is to move from a one-time content-based answer to forever useful thinking processes. So what I mean by that is when you looked at the unicorn text. The important thing was not for you to get an answer. What does this mean? I didn't ask you what does this mean as the end result, so that you could forever remember that that unicorn picture might mean that you should mistrust authority. That was not the goal. The goal was to teach you a forever useful thinking process of observe, ask why, and try to make a theory about what you can learn from it. So do you understand that shift from trying to get one answer for one text to learning a thinking process that's useful across texts? That's shift number one. Okay, shift number two. We'll have time for questions at the end, I hope, so you can go back and ask more about any of these. Shift number two is moving from look at me questions to think about this questions. So maybe you are familiar with this scenario. A teacher might say, hold up this text with the unicorn and say, look at this. This is a, and the class says, man. Look at this. What color is the couch? And the class says, red. And the purpose of those questions is not to teach thinking. The purpose is to keep the students engaged and to keep their attention on the teacher. And of course, it is important to have attention on the teacher, but in so many classrooms, it's possible to skip those questions that are only for getting attention and move to questions that are for getting attention, yes, but also push thinking. For example, the questions that I tried to model for you were, what's going on in this picture? And can you put it all together? And what does this teach? So see, those questions are higher level thinking than just, what color is this couch? Red. Who is this man? Who is this guy? Doctor. Does that make sense? Are you with me? Thumbs up if you're with me. Okay, thank you. Okay. Number three, most of the class time in an effective literacy instruction room, the kids will be talking and working, not the teacher. So I think you're all familiar with this. I go into so many classrooms all around the world, and what we mostly see is one very responsible teacher at the front of the room talking and explaining, maybe calling on students to say one-word answers here and there, but most of the time during class is spent with the teacher talking and thinking. And she or he has done an excellent job preparing that thinking or talking, but also he or she is pretty much the only one doing the thinking and talking. The students are passively listening or maybe just a little bit engaged. But in an effective literacy classroom, the kids are practicing reading, practicing writing, and you can hear them talking, working with each other. They're talking with partners a lot. They're working in small groups. They're engaged, and it's not the teacher, the student, the teacher, the student, teacher, 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 one student. So that requires restructuring of lesson time, but it will be a change that teachers can make that will make a big difference. So again, from our example, instead of me just explaining what these 6 shifts are, I was trying to engage you in some practice work after I modeled so that you would try it yourself. I know it's a bit tricky with this many people and so many on Zoom. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay, number 4. We need to shift from teaching that is asking kids to think once and move on to thinking that is layered. Think one thing, then build on your thinking, then build on your thinking, so that we can have kids experience higher level thinking and higher level creation and innovation. If they only have a chance to approach material one time and have only their first thinking stay, they don't have a chance to grow. So that means we need to try to reread or re-examine or think back on our thinking and add to it, change it, revise it, grow. And by the way, that usually means we have to have more writing in the classroom, because it's so hard to revise thinking that's only invisible in your mind. But if you have thinking that's in a model that you've built or in writing that's in the classroom, then other people can talk to you and ask questions, and you can say, oh, now I realize I should change that. That part isn't as good as it could be, or it's incorrect. So yes, that move again is to not just think once and move on, but to think and then layer again. Maybe if it's writing, you layer on with another color of writing, thinking about that. Maybe you add sticky notes on top of that to synthesize, but we're trying to move up to higher levels of thinking. Okay, number 5. We need to shift from the teacher being the main evaluator of what's going on in the room, correct and incorrect only, and instead ask the teacher to take on the role of bringing thinking into the room, and for everybody to join in thinking about those answers and deciding for themselves if they agree or if they disagree, and why, what their evidence is. So that means if somebody shares an idea, I'm not going to say, no, that's crazy. It might be incorrect, but instead I would say, okay, that's first draft thinking. What do the rest of you think? Can we add to that? Can we check it? Let's go back to the text. I might even ask the student, okay, great. Thank you for sharing your idea. Why do you think that? Can you walk us through your thinking? What did you see that led to that conclusion? Because when the thinking is in the air, then we can all build on it and critique it. But if I just say, no, who else? Does someone have the right answer? Nobody has the chance to grow and improve. And we don't know why one answer is stronger than another. Okay, the last one is about the role of the teacher. In an effective literacy class, the teacher is sharing, thinking, and learning. And that means the teacher is also sharing when she or he has made a mistake, and sometimes even pretending they've made a mistake when they have not, in order to model growing and learning from a mistake. In many classrooms that I've worked in, and maybe you know them too, the teachers feel that it is their responsibility to be perfect, to know all the answers ahead of time, and to correct the students when they're wrong. And they might even feel that the students should be afraid to say the wrong answer because they shouldn't be saying wrong answers. And so they might be very strict and severe on students if they give an incorrect answer. But if that's happening, if students are afraid to try because they may get it wrong, it's so hard to learn, right? So if we can cultivate a situation where students feel safe trying, and they know that anything they say is first draft thinking, it's a start that they can build on, then they're going to be more willing to try and engage, and then all together we can learn. So those are my 6 hopes for our literacy instruction. And I'd like to offer you some time to think about some questions you might have, or comments or questions. So if you're here in Bangkok, will you turn and talk to your neighbor about what you're thinking about all this? And if you're joining us online, feel free to put some questions or comments in the chat box, and someone will help me to answer those or respond to some of those too. So go ahead, take a moment and collect yourself, your thinking. but I just don't know how to do it. Okay, sure. Okay, are there questions or comments or points people would like to make? I'm getting some information from online, see what people say. I know you here in Bangkok have ideas because I saw you talking to each other. Don't be shy. Every answer is good. First draft thinking, right? What do you think? Are you ready to try some of these things? Wow. Yeah, if they have questions, I hope they have some questions. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know that the chat box was locked. So I hope you guys will remember your questions to ask in a few moments. And okay, I have a question here from Bangkok about Think Aloud. When I was trying to demonstrate for you, some of you noticed that I was doing something that, yes, we've called Think Aloud, where you're trying to say your thinking process out loud with students. And that's something we do in teaching reading very often. We don't just tell students an answer, we try to help them by offering an example of ourselves, experienced readers, going through a process. So when we're reading a book, for example, a picture book, for some of you who aren't connected to picture books, is it usually has very few words, and if you only read the story, you won't understand fully. You have to study what's going on in the picture in order to understand. So it's very important in reading a picture book that you think about the context and study the pictures right from the beginning. So if you are introducing picture books in your classroom to students and trying to help them in these thinking processes, you might think aloud to help them learn how to orient themselves to the story before they begin. So what I'm going to do is say what is in my brain to make it in the air as an example to students. And then I'm going to name the steps I went through so that they can copy them and apply them to another book. So I'll do that right now as an example for you. So I'm holding, can the camera focus on this book cover? Is that possible for the Zoom people? Well, I'll describe it to you while they're getting the camera ready. I am holding up a picture book. Maybe I can put it like this. Can you see it better like this? I'll put it even in front of my face. If I was about to introduce this picture book to my students, I would say, wow, students, look, we're about to read this picture book. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see me. I'll describe it to you anyhow. Students, I'm holding up this picture book, and on the cover, it says it's called Rosie's Walk. And every time I pick up a picture book, I start the same way. I get myself ready to read it by looking at all the information. So right away, Rosie's Walk, I'm thinking, wow, I guess this book is going to be about someone called Rosie. I wonder who that might be. And then I look at the cover and I try to figure out who the main character might be to get myself ready to read. So Rosie's Walk, I'm looking at it and I see a fox and a hen. So I don't know which one is going to be Rosie. I'm going to be holding that idea in my mind. Also, before I start, I'm going to be thinking, I wonder what this is going to be about, because that will help me understand it. It narrows down the possibilities of what this book is going to be on the inside if I have that idea to begin. So I'm looking right here and I can see on the cover that there's a hen walking along. And then right here on the edge is a fox. Wow. And I know from my life that when a fox gets near a hen, I know the kinds of things that happen. The fox usually tries to get the hen and eat it. So I wonder if this book is going to be about that fox trying to get that hen. So that, students, is what I always do when I get started reading, is I will look at the cover of the book and I will try to figure out what is going to go on based on what I can see in the cover. I read the title and I try to find the main characters because that's going to help me read the book. Now, if you were students, you would have books also, maybe also Rosie's Walk, maybe a different book. And I would, again, just like in my demonstration, name the process. I would say, did you see how first I looked at the book and read the title? And then I tried to get myself ready to read by looking closely at it to see who the main characters are and what it's probably going to be about. Students, when you read your book, do the same thing. Use that same thinking process of studying the cover, looking at the title and thinking who the characters, main characters will be and what it's going to be about. And that's going to help you read better when you have that in your mind. And then I'll go around and help you. So that's what I mean by a think aloud for that forever useful thinking processes item number 1. It means you demonstrate a reader's thinking out loud with examples, and also you name the steps of the process that the reader can go through in their own book. So thinking aloud has 2 parts, you giving an example with a shared text and you naming the steps with the students. And that think aloud is a tool across literacy instruction, not just for reading, but also for writing, for speaking, for listening. You offer the students an example and then break down the steps and let them try. That's a great question. More about think aloud. Other questions or more clarification? Yes, I heard some people talking earlier about what happens if students are talking or how to make that work, like how to keep things from getting too crazy. And that's a really good question, because if students are used to sitting in rows with the teacher teaching at the front of the room, and suddenly you want them to be talking to each other more and working in groups, that's not a quick switch to make, right? So what I would recommend is that if you want to try introducing more student talk in your classroom right away, that you start by doing something called turn and talk. So I did that a little bit in our model, where I asked the people in Bangkok to turn and talk to their neighbor about their thinking. And you can do that in your classrooms too, no matter how big or small they are, but it does take some explicit teaching. You will need to say, you know, students, I want you to have more chance to share, because when only one of you talks at a time, only one of you has a chance to practice expressing yourself and saying your thinking out loud, and you all have ideas. So we're going to do this in our classroom more often now, something called turn and talk. And you might ask everyone to turn and look at the person next to them and meet their eyes, and then say, this is going to be your turn and talk partner for today, for next week, for however long you decide as a teacher. And that means when I say turn and talk, you turn to that person you've just looked at, and you're going to discuss your thinking. And then when I raise my hand up here, that means come back to me. So you're not going to be talking for a long time to that person, just quickly to share ideas and then attention back on me. So you might say to your students, let's practice that. And actually, people in Bangkok, let's practice that, okay? Okay, turn to the person next to you and meet their eyes so that you know who you're going to turn and talk to. It could be 2, it could be 3 people. Everybody set? Do you know who you're going to talk to? Okay, let's practice. Turn and introduce yourself. Turn and talk. Introduce yourself to your partner. And then when I raise my hand, eyes back on me. Okay. And I might say to my students, great, you got that. You turned and talked, and then you put your eyes back on me. But you know what, students? That took a little bit longer. We're going to do this than it should. We're going to do this a lot, turning and talking. So let's practice so that we're really good. And as soon as I raise my hand, you're quiet and your eyes are on me again. Let's practice. Okay, ready, Bangkok group? Turn and talk. Ooh, much better. That was very quick. So that's what you can do with your students to help them realize how important it is that they talk, but also you don't lose complete attention. Like that they're just going to talk for a minute and then eyes back on you. But it's true. That question is a good one. It's true. You need to have careful classroom management and attention on that process so that it doesn't just go crazy. But if you teach kids routines, they can do it, and they're happy to have a chance to share. Sometimes after a turn and talk in the classroom, it's really helpful to have just 1, maybe 2 people share after they've talked to their partner, so that it's not the whole class sharing, but they've already had a chance. But then 1 or 2 people can share to the whole class so that we can move forward together. Another thing that this is really helpful for is introverts and kids whose language is maybe Thai is not their first language, because they can talk to a friend if they're a bit shy and say their ideas and thinking, and that makes them a bit braver to maybe share in person or to maybe participate in the next group discussion. So that's a great point. Do we have time for one more question? Okay. Anyone? Don't be shy. Okay, there's a question in the air about how you know thinking processes to teach. And that is a really good question. How do you know what thinking processes to teach? That came up several times in our workshop across these days. And I will tell you that's not an easy answer. The best way to know when you don't have a curriculum that offers it to you is to do your best you all are experienced readers and experienced writers. And you need to do your best to trace your own thinking. Like, how did I get that idea? How did I get an idea of what to write? How did I understand this small book? So if you are deciding on a text that you're going to offer your students and you're preparing to share it with them, the best thing to do is to read it yourself first, but with your eyes on yourself as a learner, with your eyes on yourself, trying to catch exactly what you did to figure out a hard word, exactly what you did to try to make sense of it beyond just like this. For so many of us, reading and writing has become automatic. So it does take a little work to try to catch your own thinking so that you can share it with students for whom it's not automatic. And I'll tell you a little trick that sometimes I ask students to think out loud when they're figuring out something so that I can copy their steps. So you can ask a child or student, like give them a problem, like you might give them a word problem in math or something like this, give them a text and say, can you just walk me through, say out loud what you're trying? Like show me, point to where you're starting to look first. Tell me, what are you thinking? Why did you decide to look there? What are you noticing? And they can say out loud what they're doing, and that helps you remember what you did to figure it out. I know that's not easy. I hope that doesn't discourage you. Okay. It's 10:45. Do we have time for one more or no? Is the chat box open now? Is the chat box open? Which is now open. Okay, I'm sorry the chat box is still not open, so all of you online are not being attended to, but please don't forget your questions, because we're in a few minutes, we're going to have a discussion, and so I can answer them then, or do my best to put them to the rest of you to answer. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll see you in a moment.
Thank you, Kate. And that was a really powerful presentation. We all can feel that you truly care about the children. And yeah, for Thai people, it's pretty difficult to think aloud because we tend to keep things to ourselves. That's what I understand. But we are trying our best to demonstrate how to think out loud to the students, so we can create critical thinking skills to the students. Anyway, well, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Corcoran and Dr. Kesara, are you ready? I think they're ready to discuss that topic now.
Yes, we are ready.
Well, I'm happy to tell you that the chat box is open. So if you have questions or comments to make, you can type in the chat box. But everyone is still on mute. I understand that everyone is still on mute. But if you have questions, once again, you can type in the chat box or comments, and we will answer your questions during the discussion part with Dr. Kesara and Professor Corcoran. Okay, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Corcoran and Dr. Kesara are now ready to discuss. So everyone, please welcome Professor Corcoran and Dr. Kesara.
Hello, Kesara, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Tom.
Oh, I'm glad. I thought I was
Tom.
all alone in ether space. Yes.
Yes, we can. So you can start the session now.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, good morning, and to our audience. I'm sorry for the little confusion. We're going to have a little discussion here about some questions that have come up in the last few days. And then we also are going to open the floor to the audience to allow you to also offer your ideas about these questions. But let me begin by directing a question to Kate Montgomery. Thank you for your presentation. And I would like you to comment on if you were a 7th grade teacher and you found that you had a few students who could not read the textbook in your class, perhaps a science class, what would you do to help such students deal with the textbook and the curriculum?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a problem for a lot of teachers, actually, or a challenge for a lot of teachers. The first thing I would do probably is commend the students for bringing the problem to our attention. Make sure that they know that by expressing the fact that they can't understand the textbook, it's a great step, because that's the only way they can learn more. Because if they're ashamed or embarrassed or afraid to share that information, they never could have learned. So that's the first most important thing, is to set the stage for them to improve by making them feel okay about where they're at and know that they can grow and they will grow. And I think there's short-term things to do to help the lessons immediately in the science class. And there are also long-term things to help teach the students how to read better. So for short-term solutions, it may be that someone outside of the classroom reads the text aloud to them. That maybe it might be a student in the class, it might be a teacher, it might be somebody in another classroom, helps them by preparing them hopefully before the lesson that they can't read, and not after or during, so that they don't have that period of being completely lost. If you can help teach them, have somebody read it to them ahead of time, that will help the lesson go more smoothly. If they can read it a little, kind of, but not well, it may be enough to have them partner read ahead of time with someone else, maybe someone else who's also struggling a little bit, but just have the extra time to read it together. And after each part, retell to each other what it means. So they just might need a little more time to process what's going on. That's just in this, and the other short-term solution could be finding related materials. If it's a science topic, for example, as you said, Tom, it could be finding related articles on the same topic that are easier to read. For example, if it's on the digestive system, teachers, if they are connected to the internet, could go on, say, Newsella or a site like that and find easier articles at lower reading levels that are also on the digestive system. Because when students have the background knowledge about the topic, the reading becomes easier. So they could start reading about the digestive system at their level until they can move to the textbook level, which might even be fairly quickly. So those are just some quick moments for a particular lesson. But in general, if the student can't read at that level, you're right, it's an emergency, it's a crisis, and there will need to be out of school support for that small group of students. Hopefully someone, an adult or another student, would be willing to meet with them to read at whatever level they're at after school for a little bit each day, or pretty often, not just one long session on the weekend, but like regular, consistent practice over time. And even if that person is not a skilled reading teacher, just putting attention onto texts that are at the student's level and gradually moving up levels will be enough. Although if you don't have leveled texts, even close study of very challenging texts can help, will help. So maybe that's saying too much, maybe that's saying not enough, I don't know, but I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question has come up often in my conversations has been that since 6 of the countries in SEAMEO have a large number of students who struggle with reading, what should the ministries of education be doing to remediate to reduce this problem? What could ministries do that would help improve reading? Either one of you want to comment on that?
Let me answer this question. Right. There's a lot of measures to be done. First of all, the ministry should take immediate action to address the issue of the low literacy rate among students in the country and find ways to improve student reading literacy. Like we should have the literacy national policy established with implementation guidelines for teachers to reform the way teachers teach and assess reading in schools. Also, the Ministry of Education should provide students with appropriate reading materials like picture books that we have today. building capacity of teachers to use teaching approaches to integrate reading and writing in all subjects, not just the language subject, right? And also provide schools with question banks for the assessment to improve reading skills of students, or using the SEAMEO primary learning metrics called Southeast Asia PLM that we mentioned earlier. And last but not least, I think that we need to engage parents to help their kids improve reading skills, and also provide them with parent-friendly resources on literacy skills. This is what I can think about at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Panpan.
Tom, can you, did you hear what Dr. Ponpan say?
Yes, I could.
Was it clear to you?
Yes, it was clear.
Okay, yeah.
So, did you want to add anything?
No, we have more questions, I think, related to the first question posed to Kate. Okay, and I think, yeah, it's good that some question, I think it will also related to what Dr. Ponpan also has a response, but I think there are some specific practices that I think is very interesting, right? So I think the first one that I think is very interesting, may I read to you and to the floor that
You may.
this is a question. What practical steps do you suggest to motivate students into critical thinking when these students are used to not thinking, designing for themselves? I mean, when most often someone else designs for them, what would be the first step? I think this is a very good question, Kate.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that I wonder if you would agree with me, but I think that human beings love learning and new ideas. Maybe if they're not loving critical thinking, maybe they're a bit worried they will do it wrong. They're worried about being judged or failing, but people like getting ideas. Humans like getting ideas. So I think one way to support them into trying this work is with making sure they feel safe and not judged, that you're supporting even very beginning ideas and saying, wow, you had an idea. Wow, look at that. You had a comment. Look, everybody had an idea. That's great. And being positive about even things that are very underwhelming, maybe. That's one thing. Another way that we are trying in Thailand right now is using stories, using picture books, because they're not intimidating, they're inviting. You know, the pictures draw people in, the stories are joyful, and students are critically thinking without even realizing it. And then you can tell them, look what you did. You can do that critical thinking that you did with that picture book. You can do it in math, you can do it in history just the same way. Wow, look at the levels of thinking you've achieved. So using joy and stories and inviting materials is another way. I mean, others in our audience may have found success motivating kids in other ways, and I hope you'll add those.
May I add to Kate? I think from the workshops that we conducted in the past 3 days, right? The technique that you introduced about thinking out loud, how teachers model the thinking process, but that process need to be able to stimulate, right, student to think. And during that thinking process, I think when students see how teacher think, right, and then it's time that teacher also should allow student to, I would say, like maybe follow the same process, but in the next page, right? So that they can have their own idea, but follow the same process that the teacher used before in the earlier page of the books, right? Yeah, I think that is also one of the technique that Kate emphasized during her lecture earlier. Yeah. So from the floor, Tom, do you think maybe should we look at the chat if anyone would like to discuss in this topic, the first two topics, the policy and also the instructional practice? What would you say?
Are you asking me or are you asking the floor?
Yeah, asking you because you now control the leader sessions.
Oh, is that right? I thought
Yeah.
you were leading the session. So,
yeah,
well,
if anyone on the floor would like to discuss,
well,
whether in this room or in the.
well, I'd like to add to what Dr. Panpan said. I think there are a number of things ministries could do. For example, we could require all teachers to have a course in language development or in reading before they're certified. Many countries do that because at Columbia and at other places, we believe that all teachers are literacy teachers. So reading and writing is not just for the language teacher. It's also something that science teachers and history teachers and math teachers should be prepared to contribute to. So we could require that all teachers get some training in reading. We also, as Dr. Panpan said, we should provide more reading material to the schools. And Kate introduced the idea of levels. There is a strategy for leveling books, which we need to introduce to the region and make sure that schools and in school libraries have books available at different levels and books that are of high interest to both girls and boys. So not just academic books, but we need books on what children will enjoy reading, books on fashion or books on motorcycles, books on airplanes, things that young boys and young girls might enjoy reading. So the schools need larger budgets to buy books, and we need to make sure that the authors in our country are producing the kind of books that children will enjoy reading. Because so let me go to another question here that's come up. We know from research, one of the things we know is that
Tom,
yes.
Can I interrupt a little bit? There are more questions that related to the practice. Is it okay that I like Kate to share about the thinking, which I think is very, very interesting. This question are from the floor in the chat box. May I?
You go ahead.
I also want to know if critical thinking and thinking process are the same. Kate.
Great question. I think they're not the same. Thinking process is describing step by step how to think about something, but it could be how to think about something on a pretty low level. For example, if you want to try to help someone figure out the procedure for an experiment, you would ask them, the thinking process might be, think about what you need to do first, what you need to do next, what you need to do next, and picture in your mind how that will go, and then write the steps. So that's the process, but the actual thinking is pretty low level. All it is remembering the process and writing it down. You're not analyzing, you're not comparing, you're not evaluating, you're not creating. So critical thinking is more high level, where you're evaluating and critiquing and analyzing. And it has a thinking process of how to do that, but they're not the same. Does that make sense? I hope I answered.
So Kate, you are referring to like the level that maybe Bloom taxonomy is one example that how thinking can be progressed through different level, right?
Yes.
From the lower level to a high level, right? And then, yeah, that's great. And another question that I think is relevant, very relevant to the former question is, how should we check the thinking process for students to be successful?
Wow, what an interesting question. I think the question means, how can we assess the thinking process? Or maybe it's checking. You think it's assessment? Yeah. Well, I think if the student is writing about their thinking or saying aloud their thinking, then we teachers can listen or read and see what's going on. So that's one way we can understand what they're doing. Also, if they're able to get to a high level of thinking, if their answer is a complicated, interesting answer, that means that they've managed to go through the thinking process pretty successfully. I'm not sure if the question means like, how should we evaluate or grade that or not? But if you have a thinking process that you've taught the students, for example, the one we used this morning of observe the text closely, then ask why, and then try to learn from it. If you've taught them that process, you might also write it down on chart paper in the classroom, step 1, step 2, step 3, and ask students to go through the same process and in their notebooks, check off, have I done step 1, observed? Have I done step 2, asked why? Have I figured out a bigger theory or message? Step 3. So that's one way we can ask the students to self-assess, but then also read that checklist and see for ourselves, have they gone through the thinking process? I hope that answers the question.
I have another interesting questions. This is it. I teach mathematics in high schools. In word problems, making meaning is not only in interpreting the actual problem, but it goes to making sense and meaning to evaluate if the answers are correct. When asked on their difficulty, sometimes thinking out loud is not enough. Is there any other way we can encourage students to speak on specific difficulty in reading and comprehension?
That's a great question. Wow. Okay. For this math teacher, I think that you yourself are going to be a great resource to answer this question, because what you can do is take one of those word problems that your students struggle with and look at it yourself and try to put yourself in their shoes a bit, but really use your own brain too and think, okay, what do I do to solve this problem in my mind? Probably you're going to discover that you visualize when you read a math problem somewhat, like you're thinking about the lever, or you're thinking about how many apples each person has, so that you're picturing the physical world a bit to help you understand the words on the page. Probably also you're paying more attention to some words than others, like he adds his homework money to her homework money, or, you know, whatever the words are that suggest functions in math. So probably you could be annotating or underlining or highlighting. You do it mentally because you're a skilled mathematics teacher, but students could do it on the page, helping themselves realize which words are going to direct their understanding of what to do and which ones are less important. So if you think aloud to yourself as you solve a word problem that your students will have, you can probably find the steps of how you think about solving it that you can then think aloud to your students, demonstrate it, and then give them another word problem to apply the same process. It's worth a try.
Thank you, Kate. And there's a question that mentioning about that Tom, you list out that you said that 6 SEAMEO countries that students are struggling in reading and understanding, right? And then so I think an audience here was curious that how they can get to that access to that information. So so if anyone is interested to learn more about CPLM, you can go to the website of SEA, Southeast Asian -PLM, which stand for Primary Learning Metrics, C-PLM. So you can go to the website, search for this website. It's a collaboration project between SEAMEO and UNICEF. Okay, so that you can find more information about how they measure and what countries participating in this program. So, Tom, please go to the next discussion question, please.
Okay, as I started to say before, we know from research that the more children read, the better readers they become. So that reading more frequently is an important strategy for improving reading. So what can we do to get children to read more inside and outside of school?
Yeah, for the question,
I threw the question to the
like
panel.
to share my viewpoint. I think if we talk about the inside classroom, it can start from the lesson plan, that how reading and writing is embedded in the lesson plan. For example, at the introduction of the lesson, teachers might introduce a short story related to the topic of teaching and have kids read maybe an article or several passages, and teacher also need to have techniques how to help students understand and also discuss. There might be some critical thinking question that teacher posed in order that student can discuss about what they learned from those article or passages. Or at the end of the lesson, teachers might encourage students to write, to reflect what they have learned in a journal. Okay. So I think in the lesson plan, teachers might need to show that what are reading and writing activities that now teachers pay more attention, and then have ways to track the progress, that how much vocabularies that students use to recap what they learned today. Yeah, so I think that can be the something, an example of how teachers can embed reading and writing. And also outside the classroom, the schools can think about organizing reading club. Right? Form a group of students, encourage students to form a group who enjoy reading first as the leader to lead this club together with the supervising teachers and provide them with the books and some strategies so that this group can be the champions in the schools and start to help encourage other students to enjoy the reading. I think the love of reading can start inside the school in different settings, and we need champions from the teachers and the school. I also learned from you, Tom. You used to tell me story about that some school, the principal also joy the leading by having like the book of the month, and every student in the school study or read that book together, and then there is a day that the principal joy the sharing of about what they learn about from the book, and maybe even invite the author, the publisher to talk about the the inspiration behind that book in order that students and teachers can even learn more. In the past 3 days, our teachers had a chance to listen to the person who involved in book publishing, and then to share with us about great story behind the book that maybe if we read the book alone, we might not have got it, that many interesting messages. So I think providing the venue for students, teachers to enjoy reading the book together, also promote the love of book reading. So
Yes,
some
I
of my
think,
replies.
I think those are good ideas. I want to share an idea from a long time ago when I was a young student. I went to a school in a rural area, and my school had a very small library, but the state that I lived in provided a mobile library. They took a school bus and they filled it full of books, and that bus went from school to school during the week. So once a week, the bus came to our school, and all the children could go on aboard the bus and look at the books, and you were allowed to take 3 books out for the week to read. And that's how I got started as a reader, was reading books from that. We called it the mobile library. Some people called it the bookmobile. And the bookmobile would come by my school once a week, and we could go on board and get books. And we could do things like that. The ministries could do things like that in the region. If you can't afford to buy a lot of books for every school, you can buy books and put them on a truck or a bus and then move them around from school to school.
Yes, I think that is another great idea to promote the joy of reading in outside the classroom, right?
Right.
We have a very, yes, please, Kate.
I was just going to add that for teachers here who don't have control over whether they're going to get books for their kids, and there's no bookmobile yet, and they don't have books yet, I would say I've been to a lot of places, very rural places, where there are books somewhere in the community and sometimes even in the school, but they're so often locked in a closet. And maybe to protect the books, maybe because the teacher doesn't really know how to use the books, or they're maybe not perfect, not the right level exactly. But I would say it's so important to get texts in kids' hands. Use any books you can get. They're no use in that closet. So I would grab a teacher group, grab some friends, and see if you can get access to that book closet and just dive in and see if there's anything you can use in any way. It might even be that the kids sort the books, like books I would love to be able to read, books that look really boring, books I can make sense of, get them interacting with the text and see what you can learn from that, because there's no replace. You can't learn to read without trying to read. And if you have no choice, just use any text you can get. And you may even have to make texts with kids. It may be that in your class, you're making small stories and books together so that everybody can read them. There's no replacing that. They can't learn to read without reading.
There's another interesting question about the size, the class size, or that what is suitable to promote readings.
I can say it's much easier and more effective in smaller class sizes, but I've definitely worked in classes as large as 60 or even 80 in some, immigration refugee community centers. There's not enough teachers, and it's everybody who can hear you is in the class, and you really have to work in groups, small groups of talking, and there's still individual participation, but it isn't one-on-one teacher to student participation. The teacher is orchestrating student group work.
So do you mean that a student in a group must have at least one book?
It's great if one book per student, or even partners, 2 people per one book. But if you don't have that as a resource, you can make it work with more students per book, because some teachers can't control that. So then you just try to help everybody sit on the same side of the book, so the text is right side up, and people have to lean over this way, not sitting so the text is upside down. That's no use for reading. And you work on ways to pass the book across the group so that everybody gets to look at it up close. And you work on talking together across the group more than talking directly to the teacher, so that everyone talks more.
And there is another question related to the resource on the website, on the internet. Are those content suitable or appropriate if we talk about promoting reading?
Any text is better than no text, but unless all your students can see it, it's hard to teach with the internet reading. So if you can project it and do some kind of group reading, sure. But if it's just, if only the teacher can see it and the students don't all have laptops or iPads, then I'm not sure how it can work. But yes, there are e-libraries that are full of free texts that you can sort by topic and even level. I don't know, I'm not an expert on ones in various Southeast Asian languages, but I'm sure they exist. And it would be great if there's also paper books so that students can get close and personal with the book. But yes, of course, absolutely, ebooks work also.
The reading that we are referring to, are we referring to the mother tongue language of students? Is that the priority? No, the other one, there's like this, yeah, the foreign language. Yeah, so yeah, are we referring to the for Thai, they are Thai, right? So it should be like the official language of what we want to build the literacy skills for the kids. Am I right?
Yes, I happen to be speaking English, but I was recommending these strategies for native language readers.
Yeah. And how about those students who are like immigrants, who might have trouble in like the official language Thai, but they are supposed to be in Thai classes? How we should promote the reading of Thai, yeah, for those migrants?
Yeah, that is another whole workshop all by itself, because there's lots of ways to do it and lots of challenges in it. But if we're talking about teaching thinking, if we can manage to communicate with those students, they can often participate at the same level as other students. They might not be able to write as much, but they can communicate with drawing because they have ideas at the same level as the other students who are native speakers.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
We
So-
can hear you now.
Okay. So Kate has talked a lot this morning about picture books. And I think we commonly associate picture books with the primary grades. Could you speak a little bit to, are picture books also useful with secondary students?
Yes. You first.
That's a great question. Picture books, the language may be low level or not very much text, but they can be about very complicated topics, and they can promote very complex and mature thinking as well. So they're an excellent tool for teaching anyone of any age. We've had a workshop here this week in Bangkok where we used picture books, and all of us adults learned from them, learned ideas and perspectives, and exercised our brains on those picture books, and that it works everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with Kate. I think individuals carry with them different experience, right? And by sharing, that leads to the joy of exchanging ideas and helping us to get to know each other, because we are from different background. I think pictures book can be used to promote thinking and also promote exchanging ideas, promote the culture of accepting that the different point of views of each other, and that might also lead to respecting each other. So teamwork, team building activities also can use pictures book to promote that. So I think pictures book can be used in different level, from kids to adults, depending on the purpose of what we would like to promote. Yeah.
Good. Just
Do you
comment.
agree, Tom?
Yes, I do agree. But a comment, I was a history teacher many years ago. And sometimes I would just show my class a picture and have a discussion about what they saw and what in the picture was different from what they would see today. What was different and why was it different? So sometimes you can get a good discussion going just by having people look at a picture. Well, what is the meaning you take away from the picture? There's a question that's popped up on the chat here.
Tom, we have interesting questions related to how to create a reading culture for the whole school. Yes, Kate, you would like to share your experience in that?
Yeah, I love that question. It's smart to create a whole school culture of reading and not just depend on each individual teacher. Very good, great question. I think that teachers being visibly demonstrating their reading lives all the time, like carrying books with them so that all the students can see, or saying, wow, I got this book, I'm so excited to read, and leaving a big stack, talking to everyone about their favorite books, having kids write a little post-it or sticky note about their favorite books and leave it on a big bulletin board, have the principal come into the classroom and recommend a book that he or she loves that the students might love, have the students go around the school and have a survey to find out all the favorite books of the staff, or when they like to read, or where they like to read. Maybe creating reading logs so that the kids can keep track of all the books they've read over the course of the year, so they can be so excited to show their families or show other people. I think the more visible the reading is, and writing too, actually, the more it will help. So putting poems on the wall, putting people's likes and dislikes in the air everywhere in the school will help a lot.
Yeah. And
Um,
from the teacher's view, I try to think of how to promote, you said about like how to promote students, right? Actually, we also try to help promote teachers to work together, that how they can plan a lesson together, that the Thai teachers or the history teachers and science, they can think about what kind of reading that teachers can use in their class that relate to the content in science and history that they can share, right? So I think, yes, the teachers also play a very big role in help promote the reading in the classroom, and the school administrator can plan that what kind of event, extracurriculum activities can be done to promote
Yes,
the
sir,
reading
can
outside
I-
the classroom. Yeah.
I interrupt you for a minute to add a thought.
Yes. Yes.
Many
Please.
schools in the United States have a contest where they give small rewards to children who read 100 books. One of my granddaughters got a nice award from her school. I think it was a small camera or something that she won for reading 100 books in the past year. So many schools use rewards to stimulate children to read more, and then the teacher questions each child on each book they read to make sure that they actually understand it. So the children read a book, then they go to the teacher and have a discussion, and they get a check mark for that book. And when they reach 50 books or some number, then they can choose a gift. That the principal keeps all the gifts in his office, and children get to go and choose something they like. Yeah. So that's another method for encouraging more reading.
There are many questions related to how to encourage students who struggle, right, to speak up, share ideas. So Kate, what teachers need to do to encourage students who have been struggling in reading to read more, share ideas more, because they might lack confidence or shy? What would be your techniques to overcome that?
Well, again, trust in the teacher that they won't be made to feel embarrassed or ashamed from a mistake or a not very wonderful answer. That will be one way. Another way to encourage shy speakers is to have that turn and talk time, so they can say their idea first, just to one person. That's a bit easier than saying their idea the first time to more people. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and I've heard a lot when you say building trust, right? What kind of language, right, that teacher can use to build trust and help students gain confidence in not feeling that, oh, it might be wrong, or teacher might judge them? What kind of language? Can you give an example?
Sure. I mean, the teacher can even be very direct, like saying, none of us have the perfect idea. None of us have the correct answer here. We're just trying together. So can somebody help start us with, even with a very small idea? Does anyone have just some first thought to think to get us started?
And I've heard a lot when you model the questions or answer, you always say, that's an interesting idea. That sounds wonderful. That sounds great. So these kind of phrases, right, that teachers need to practice more.
Encouraging students by naming what they're doing that you hope they do forever can be very powerful. Oh, I'm so, did you all hear how that child asked a question? That's so brave to ask a question like that. Wow. Or isn't it wonderful how curious we are as a class? We have so many questions. So being positive about not just, oh, you got a correct answer, good job, because you can't, that again encourages students just to say the thing that's correct. So if you can try to name the process or the characteristic that you hope they always have, it's another way to be encouraging.
Yeah, I've heard you like, oh, that's brave that they share the ideas, right? And how about when when students give an answer that maybe it's like quite like digressing, what would you do?
Well, there are different kinds of student digressions, right? Like one is when you're trying to teach something about the story and the student just says, my grandmother came to visit, and it has nothing to do with anything at all. So in that case, I would hopefully instruct the whole class before that happens. We're only going to talk about the story today at this time. We'll talk about our families at a different time. So then you can remind the student when that kind of digression happens, oh, we're just talking about the story right now, and make some gentle signal.
How about if they answer not on a point?
Yeah,
what would you do?
That happens a lot too. Hopefully, no matter what their answer, you're asking them to say more about why they think that. Even if it's a great answer that's very on point, you can say, why did you think that? How did you get to that answer? Can you explain your thinking? So they have to go back and look for evidence to explain more. And it's okay if it's not on point because they're still working in the process.
And there are many questions related to the class size, and then if there are large number, there is a large number of students in the classroom, how teachers can promote the reading in the large size classroom from 50 to even 100 from this question?
Yeah, it's a challenging situation for a teacher with 100 students, right? It's great that you're working. Thank you for doing your job. When you have that many students, it's very hard. In the classrooms I've worked that have this many students, it has to be a little different. It can never be just the teacher in the front doing all the talking. It has to be groups. And usually the teacher needs to recruit some teacher helpers that because there's often not a microphone and the teacher can't yell loud enough so that everyone can hear. That would hurt his voice or her voice. So there's often a few students that the teacher talks to before the lesson and says, can you help me teach today? And it's not always the same best students. It rotates. And those students, then the teacher talks about what the lesson's going to be. And then those students go stand in different areas under whichever trees or outside the room and helps the teacher based on the plan ahead of time. And the students have to know that they have to help the teacher manage this number. Like just say, listen, that we are all here to learn. I can't be the only teacher in the room. You all have to rely on each other, teach yourselves, and I will coach you and guide you as best I can, and have some repeating structure of students helping lead.
You mentioned about the technique to help students speak up right? Like turn and talk, right? When students turn and talk, what do teachers do during the turn and talk time? What is the role of the teacher?
Sometimes during turn and talk, the teacher is just gathering her own thinking for the next part of the lesson because it's so short. The kids are just turning and talking for a short time. But sometimes the kids talk a bit longer and the teacher can walk around or listen in at table or desk after desk and see, are the students understanding me? Are they able to do the task? Are they talking about it? And then come back to the front and say, wow, I heard some really interesting things from you all, and share a few things to continue the motivation. Or, oh, I heard that a few people didn't understand what I said. Let me say it a new way, and can continue the lesson that way.
Teachers will conduct a formative assessment, right? And then informally, and then see that what are at what level of student already progress, right?
Exactly. And it's also a great time to be encouraging students who are shy or struggling to saying, I heard the most amazing thought that really changed my thinking from, and you can.
And but at that time, you don't do you also let students share what they think?
You might let a few students share, probably not everyone though, because that would take too long. And you want everybody working.
So selecting some students to share also very important. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tom, do you have any additional views towards this?
No, I have nothing additional to share. Are there?
Yeah.
I think we probably reached the end of our time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have a very good discussions, and we really appreciate your interest in posing many great questions for us to discuss in this morning, right? And we believe that what we have discussed based on your questions would be helpful and inspiring, so that you have energy and ideas to implement some of those techniques that Kate, Tom, and I share in your classroom, outside of classroom, and in your school. And yeah, we hope that we will see you sometime in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to thank all the
Yes, yeah. I think
contributions.
the organizer might share the three of us the profile and then email address later on, so that if you have any questions later on, the organizer can help coordinate that. Yes, Tom, do you like to have a final word before we end the session?
Only thank you very much for your contributions. I hope people try out some of these ideas in their classrooms.
Okay. Thank you, and see you next time.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor Montgomery, Professor Corcoran, and Dr. Gesara. That was a very informative discussion indeed. And I have to say that we received a lot of information questions from the chat box. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time to answer all of those questions. However, there will be a lot of other interesting sessions in the future. So I would like to encourage everyone to follow our Facebook and YouTube for more interesting activities in the future. Now, at this juncture, let me invite the Program Director, SEAMEO STEM-ED Center, Dr. Gesara Amonwutiwan, to give a closing remark. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Gesara.
So I would like to say that it's a great pleasure that SEAMEO STEM-ED with support from Chevron Corporation have been able to organize this sharing session. And this sharing session is a continuation of the workshop that we had conducted in the past 3 days. And I think this is a great start that we can build an awareness on literacy. And there are so many messages that we have learned from the floor, that from your discussion, questions that you have from Professor Tom, and especially from Kate, who has shared with us her experience and good practices that how teacher can implement the literacy in their classroom. So I would like the organizer to share the slide that I have shared about learning poverty, because it is the inspiration that why we organizing this the workshop and this event. We believe that by age 10, each kid should be able to read. It's very, very important that if we leave any kid behind and they cannot read simple text, they will end up in learning poverty. What does it mean, learning poverty? It means that they will not be able to progress their learning in next grade levels. It means that whatever challenges that teacher pose in any class, they lack confidence. They lose their self-esteem that they can learn. And that means they will end up to drop out and see themselves as losers. So if we do not want that to happen, we must start now. We must start by empowering them that they can read, by introducing them with great books like what Kate and Tom mentioned, that how we can promote reading and writing in a classroom. And next slide, please. World Bank has put together these recommendations about how we can end learning poverty. And this point from political commitment to promote literacy. Second one is about effective instruction techniques that Professor Kate and Tom has mentioned, and also the policy related to the classroom that Dr. Ponpan has mentioned earlier, will help students to access the learning in the classroom, access the culture, learning environment that help promote their love of reading and ability to read. The third one is the quality and age-appropriate books and materials. And this also mentioned in our discussion that providing age-appropriate books is very important. We have to observe at what level that our kids can read. If we provide them with too difficult textbooks, they will feel that they cannot read and understand, and that will even discourage them to read. So providing age-appropriate materials is also very, very important. If you would like to give kids the books, we should be able to know that at what level they are capable of reading, and introducing pictures book is a good strategy that you can try, because even with the little or small number of texts, students can enjoy thinking, because thinking is very important, that they can develop even more advanced skills besides reading, as what Kate said, right? That we will not just only promote kids to read, but also to think along the way. So from the classroom in the past that you ask kids to read around the whole class, but not thinking enough, now you can turn to new strategies that and try it out. Many strategies that Kate has mentioned today. The fourth one, teach children first in the language they speak and understand best. So that's why we promote the books in the mother tongue language of the kids before they can read. For example, before they can read English, they might read Lao, the language that of your country. So for Thais, yeah, we would like to promote that kids read Thai book first. And there are many great books, story books that has been translated, and we would like to promote that. And the final one, try to promote the love of reading for kids. And it has to start with teacher first. We believe that if teachers love to read, they can feel that how joyful that they, while they read the stories and even share with their peers. And we would like to pass on that love to our kids. And I believe that there are so many ways that teachers, educators, or even adults, or even parents group can work together in this effort to help promote the love of reading with kids. So I hope that this sharing session will be inspiring for you and meaningful for you, and help you not just only in your class, but in your schools, in your community, to think about how together we can overcome the learning poverty and help kids to enjoy reading and become quality and wonderful and happy global citizen. Thank you for participating.